We are the ones that are pushing the pace. Every practice, every day. Nothing compares to the journey we take. Snyder, Burroughs, Taylor, Day. Wrestling's great again, USA.
Okay, J'den, so talk us through your journey in Rio. So you were still in college at the time, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're still in college. Kyle was in college too. And, you guys are, young guys experience something that some athletes work decades to do. Obviously, I know you were super thankful for that opportunity. But something that I'm curious is, did you find yourself like treating the preparation and the competition any different than when you trained to win national titles, or did you treat it just like any other tournament?
And, I think I just kind of treated it like any other tournament. I mean, actually, I shouldn't say most, all of my tournaments for the most part, I'm really just kind of naive. I'm just going to do whatever and wrestle, man. And it's like, there's no, I don't look to wrestle anyone. There's no set game plan. At least when I'm free doing it. I know my sophomore year I did that. I was just like, oh, I'm going to wrestle this guy. What does he do? What about this? I was just thinking about it so much. But now it's just when I'm having fun and I'm just doing me, it doesn't really matter. I'm just going to walk in and it's like, all right, we're going to wrestle and put our best foot forward and see what happens, man.
I see there's a couple quotes that I have that you've said that I'm going to ask you about here in a few questions. And one of them says, I don't know who anyone is. I just go out and do what I do and just wrestle like you're an Olympic champion no matter who you are. So I think that's indicative of, what you're saying is that you don't care who it is. And that's how you could just wrestle you. If you do you should be able to beat everyone in the world, if not darn near close. And I feel like, you high schoolers, especially college guys, you need to really embrace that. In mindset training, how you think influences how you feel. How you feel influences how you perform. How you perform influences the outcome. So if you think that you don't care, if you truly don't care who's in front of you and you're going to treat everybody like a threat, then you feel like you just have to focus on wrestling yourself. And, you're going to take every opportunity seriously. But again, the focus is on you. So you're going to compete freely. You're going to compete to, beat guys up and score points. You're not worried about, oh my God, it's the Olympics, or I'm trying to win a national title. It's no, man, I got 6 minutes or 7 minutes of live wrestling where I got to beat a guy up and score more points and have fun doing it.
No, for sure. And especially when it's someone you haven't wrestled and like people try, you ever have the kids kind of go walk over to the other guy or anyone be like, oh, he did this to this dude. I'm like, well, that dude's not me. All right.
Yeah.
Or like, oh, he did this to you last time. This last time's not this time. I said that at nationals my junior year. How last time's not this time. Completely different.
It's true. And it's true. But again, how you think influences how you feel. So these kids think because last time they wrestled somebody, last time they lost to them, or this guy, he beat this guy by 5. Well, that guy teched me, so there's no way that I can beat that guy. Like, come on.
Right.
Put those things
totally.
aside and just focus on yourself. Wrestlers, if you're playing that track wrestling chess and the bracketology, first of all, like consider yourself a fan and not a competitor. And second of all, it's not helping you wrestle. I was just talking to a team earlier today and I was like, you guys check track wrestling, right? They raised their hand. I said, how many of you, keep your hands up. How many of you think it helps you wrestle better? They all put their hands down. So I was like, so what you're telling me is that if I told you to put your hand on a burning stove and it melted the skin off your hand, you would take it back on. And they're like, well, no, of course not. I'm like, you just told me the same thing. It hurts your wrestling, but you do it anyway.
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
crazy.
I don't know. I don't know. I hate watching film. I don't do it. That's
Brand's brothers didn't watch film either.
Yeah. It's like, why? There's no point. If I do what I do, I'm focused on me. I want to make that guy stop what I'm doing, not the other way around. I don't want to be wrestling his style or against to stop him. I want to be wrestling to thrive on my own on the mat.
That's a very good point. We always talk about keep the focus on yourself, make him worry about you. So solid. I like that. Most people would say they were surprised when you placed at the Olympics. I wasn't. I'm sure you never saw yourself as an underdog, but what was your mindset approaching the tournament in Rio? And, how would you address people that maybe saw you as a college guy that was going to get his first shot in the Olympics, but didn't expect you to do what you did?
I mean, I think it's the same thing. I will say I kind of had this thought too going into trials. And I'm going to say it kind of the way I imagined it in my head. no one expects me to win anyway. I might as well just go out there and do what I do. So, I mean, I think that was one thing that passed through my mind, was just like, people don't expect that much out of me. So, I mean, what do I have to lose? And I think also just having the naive, like I said, I'm naive. I'm just being a college guy coming into wrestling. And I remember saying this in an interview that like, I don't know freestyle. I don't do freestyle very much.
I remember that. Yeah.
But I know how to wrestle. And so like, that's my thing is like, I'm going to go out here. I'm just going to wrestle these guys. I'm going to cut it loose and just, we're just going to see what happens. I would have so much regret if I went out there and I didn't just let it all out. And I think a big thing, and I think someone who says it the best is actually Travell Delactive. I don't know if you've ever had him on your podcast or not, but Travell, he actually said it this year at Worlds. And he's actually said it to me a couple times, but he says this, he says, you go out there and you make this guy prove that he's better than you. And ask yourself the question. Before that, ask yourself the question, can I be the best in the world today? Today, can I be the best in the world? And once you answer that question, you go out there and you make these guys prove that they're better than you today. Travell, I think that's one of the best ways to say it. And I think that's kind of the mindset that I want and try to take each and every match. I want to make you prove that you are better than me right here, right now.
I've never heard it put like that. So I haven't had Travell on the podcast, but we do work with them for the Ohio RTC for their Mental Monday. So I'm definitely going to message Travell and ask him to talk about that. I think that's a phenomenal way to put it. We've all said it differently in different ways or heard it differently in different ways. Hey, go out there. You need to crush his dreams or he's going to crush yours. That's what Jordan used to say, or I've heard Jordan say, you need to go out there and take it. You can't wait for it to happen. But I almost like it better to say they have to prove that they're better than you. They have to earn it. If they're going to, one of the best quotes was from a runner, Steve Prefontaine. And he said, my favorite athlete, I actually run a club in Houston and it's called Without Limits, specifically based on the movie about him. Right. I watched it. No, I love it. I love it. And he said, you may beat me, but you're going to bleed to do it.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
So that movie spoke volumes to me. Like I said, obviously I named my first business after that movie. I bought shoes that I couldn't afford in college because it was like the 10th anniversary of his death. I remember I was already overdrawn in my account in college. I didn't have any money left for the week. And I was at Modell's Sporting Goods and I saw like the Stop anniversary shoe. And I was like, I got to have it. I looked at my bank account. I'm like, I have no money. Screw it. I'll just deal with the overdraft fees.
Worth
it. And I still have those shoes. I mean, he's just got so many great quotes, to give anything less than your best is to sacrifice the gift. And I feel like that's something that you've spoken to a lot in this talk is, you're going out there to use the gifts that God gave you to your fullest of your ability. That's your goal. It's like, let me showcase and perform my gifts, not have pressure to win or lose.
Right. For sure.
Solid. So something interesting I saw about you regarding, the goal that you set coming in to college. You said that you wanted to be an undefeated 4-timer, but you didn't want to be the next Kale. You wanted to be the first J'den. And, you said, I don't want to be remembered as a wrestler. I want to be remembered as a person. So what does that look like? How would you hope your legacy to be described as by future wrestlers? The people that are trying to emulate you, consider you as a role model on and off the mat. What does the legacy of J'den Cox, what do you hope that it looks like?
I hope that it's one that shows people that you can pour all of yourself into many different places. And more importantly, that you should pour yourself into other people more than you should pour it into yourself. And what I mean by that is, treating other people with kindness, respecting them, not being afraid to show those things like kindness, respect, honoring someone, showing people that they're special. And I don't mean, I'm not trying to say it in the same sense, because I remember earlier you were talking about love, pouring yourself into. I'm not meaning like that, but I'm meaning in the sense that you hold other people you hold other people up or above you almost. And,
Mm-hmm.
and in that sense, and when that happens, it's funny how that happens, because when you do that and you hold people in that light and with that respect, that kindness, no matter what, and that acceptance, that though you're holding, as you hold them up, then they will then hold you up. They will see you as a light, and you will be a light. And I definitely think in a world that we have today with so many differences and so many people that kind of either shun a certain type of person or anything like that, that's something that's deeply needed in the world, for people to put other people first and to accept someone and show, maybe not even just accept them, but, show kindness and respect towards someone for the sake of the matter is that they're a human being. And I think, like, also, like you said, I'm not just a wrestler, I'm a musician, I'm a singer, I'm a son, I'm a man, I'm a person. I put myself in a bunch of different, I pour myself in a bunch of different things, a bunch of different aspects of my life, and I don't put all my eggs into one box. And I try to spread that, like I said, that love, that passion, that respect, that kindness to everyone.
I think that's definitely how a lot of people would describe you. So I would agree. I told you I've got some quotes that I wrote down, some stuff that I saw you say, and I'd like you to kind of speak a little bit to them. So I'm gonna name the quote, and you kind of tell me the thought process behind it. First one: I'm not crazy, I'm insane. Tell me what that means.
Oh gosh! So that was before the Olympics, or no, that was after. That was during the Flow documentary. That I said that. I just remember people saying that. Me doing 86 and going down was nuts, and that I would just get rolled over. And then, they're like, "Oh, he's crazy for it." And I'm like, and I think what I meant by that is that, like, crazy just means, I don't know. I think I was insane for it because I completely had the intention of it. I was ready to go and be at that weight and have to go against somebody. I think crazy kind of just means you're all over the place and don't really have that, have it put together. Really, you just go in there and just go on wild. But, insanity is just kind of, I think that next level for me, where, like, I had it planned and I knew what was going to happen. I knew that this was going to be hard. I knew that this was going to be, what they said, it was going to be crazy. I knew people didn't expect much of me, but I was still willing to do it. And that's why I was like, I'm insane and I'm willing to jump into this fire.
I dig it. I think a lot of us wrestlers especially can relate to that. The next one I have is every day is a fight for me. I think you've kind of spoken a little bit to it, but maybe talk a little bit more directly to that specific phrase.
Well, that phrase is that's straight up what it means. Every day is a fight. I do struggle with depression. I struggle with memories that haunt me from my past. There are some nights I can't sleep. There's some nights I wake up in a sweat from my nightmares, from my basically having a nightmare about things that happened in my past. So every day is a fight, and it's one that I have to say there are some days I fight it gladly and fight it with the utmost, but there's some days that it does take its toll, and I don't know. It's just it sometimes seems to just take over. So
I think something. I apologize for interrupting.
No, you're good.
Something that I would say to that, if we were having a conversation, casually, something I would say to you and something that I would say to everybody that's listening that maybe can relate and feel the same way. There's two things that adversity can do for you or do to you, or there's two ways that you can look at it. You can let it define you, or you can define how it affects you. And that ultimately comes down to, on a daily basis, winning that fight between two things. Either one of these two things are going to be stronger, your coping skills or your defense mechanisms. One of the things we talk about in mindset training a lot is, that's one of the things that it's a system that we help develop, is a system of coping skills, different coping skills through wrestling that you can use for the rest of your life. So if you continue to develop your coping skills and pay specific attention to it, your defense mechanisms, the voices that are in your head, the figurative voices that are in your head, the negative thoughts, in the beginning, you're fighting it, then you're fighting less, they're getting less loud to the point where some days you don't hear them at all. So my point being, to those of you that are listening, remember that whatever you go through, whether it's on a daily basis, things in your past, you can let your adversity define you or define how it affects you. And that's still a daily process. So you can work on your coping skills, and you can work on, the baseline that you have and the skills that you have to deal with adversity on a daily basis. Or your defense mechanisms are going to get a lot stronger. So just wanted to kind of throw that out there. That's something that I hear a lot, I share a lot, and I think, pay close attention to what J'den has to say about this, and, relate this to your own personal life. So continue what you were saying.
No, for sure. I mean, like I said, like it's sometimes you're fighting this fight, and like you fight it, and you fight, like I said, you fight it gladly, and sometimes you're working to get to sometimes you're just working just to get to the next day. But it's one that I think you kind of hit it on the nail, where like, you have to fight this, and almost like you have to embrace it, because then your defensive mechanism actually, sometimes you think of it as keeping things out, but it almost is like those things trap things in.
For sure.
So it's definitely something that, and like I said, that's something I'm still trying to learn. Like I'm still working on my own, and trying to figure out. And it's something that's hard, and it will probably be, whenever you're fighting an inner struggle, whether with your heart, with your mind, with your soul, it will be the toughest thing you will ever do, but it's the most necessary thing that you will do, because how you, like you said, how you feel on the inside is definitely going to affect you on the outside, and it'll affect those around you. It can completely change your life and the people around you.
Absolutely. This was a good one I liked. Winning does not mean you got better. Winning just means you won. You got more points than the other guy. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, I mean, there are plenty of people, and I think we've seen them throughout. Everyone's seen these guys, where people go out and they win. Like, you ever seen, the person, like I like in my career, there are some people that I faced that, maybe just, weren't to where I was yet in my wrestling career, as far as maybe skill level, whether it be talent, maybe they weren't in the best situation in wrestling. So like, yeah, and there are some situations where you go and wrestle, like, I should beat this guy, right? And people will get all these points, and they take the record as like, oh yeah, this person's really good, or he's getting better. But no, that's not the case. It's just like, if I win every match and I shoot a sweep single, which I do, but if I shoot a sweep single and I shoot the sweep single the same way every time, and it never, gets better, or I'm not doing it, finding other routes to it, and it's just the same thing over and over and over again, it's just stayed plateaued. Even though I've won every match and I've done everything, I still haven't, taken the next step in my craft. I've just stayed plateaued on a step that keeps working. And there's a difference in that. And so I definitely think, like, people need to see that perspective. And when you go into the wrestling room, some guys have this mentality of, I got to win in the wrestling room. No, you need to get better in the wrestling room. Winning in the wrestling room doesn't matter. In practice, when you're in practice, no, like, you're looking to get better. Right? And there's no reason to look to win in practice. Because I've never won a national title or world championship or a world medal, Olympic medal in practice. Never have. I've never gotten anything for being in practice and winning. That's where you make everything happen, and you should be willing to take the risk, make the mistakes, piece things together, talk with your teammates, talk with your coaches, combine ideas, make things your own, and then go out there on the mat and put those things to use and keep working on them. Almost some of the matches I wrestled in when I was younger, in college, even in college, and I know this in high school as a kid, they were matches that I were using to work on my technique and get better. It was almost like another practice in the competition. Yep,
absolutely. I heard that a lot of times from the Sandersons too. They talked about that. Like, hey, this is just practice. Like, we're out here to perform. It's just practice. You guys are here to practice your moves. Actually, Kyler incentivizes his kids to do the moves that they practice in matches. He calls them milkshake moves. If you do at least 10 moves from their practice list, then you get a milkshake. If you do like 25 in the tournament, then you get a Sanderson Wrestling Academy hat, stuff like that. And all of this conversation points me back to Steve Prefontaine again, talking about it's not about whether or not you win, it's how you win. Did you get better? Did you evolve? Or did you do the same thing that you did over and over again? And we could all think about some professional athletes. Like, let's take MMA, for example. Let's take, someone like Ronda Rousey, an extremely talented athlete. She was an Olympic medalist and, one of the best judo players, female judo players of all time. Her mom was no different, right? She grew women's MMA. She was dominant, but she never evolved. She goes into these last couple fights trying to do the same judo throw and armbar, and these girls are like, no, this doesn't work anymore. You can't do the same thing that you've been doing.
Right. They're like, I'm going to kick you in the face now.
Yeah, things have changed.
She never,
absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. She never got really into boxing, really.
No, very clearly in those last two fights, it's like she forgot how to put her hands up. I'm sorry, Rhonda, nothing but respect.
For sure.
But, Kale says, unless you continue to improvise and adapt, you'll learn – improvise, adapt, and evolve. You'll learn a painful lesson from somebody who has.
Oh, that's true. That's very true. I mean, if you're not willing to make the adjustments to better yourself, then definitely the person who has. I mean, that's why, we see it all the time. I think the national tournament is a prime example. Like people think when you see those upsets happening, do you think it's luck, sheer luck that those things are happening, that someone comes back and beats someone that pinned them or teched them a couple weeks ago?
Right.
Like, no, I think those are examples that you see sometimes of what we're talking about, of someone saying like, all right, I got to get better. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go back in the room and I'm going to work on this. That's just a prime example of it.
Something to touch on real quick that you said earlier, you were talking about when you were getting ready for the Olympic trials and you dropped down and nobody thought much of you dropping down. They thought you were going to get smashed. You're like, I'm just going to go in there and like do my thing and see what I can do. That's the mindset. I feel like that the Kyle Cannells, the Tariq Wilsons, the Ronnie Perrys, the Bryce Meredith a few years ago, like that's becoming a more regular thing. Is it doesn't have to be a Cinderella story. These guys that are unseeded wrestlers making the semifinals, pinning guys that they're not supposed to, beating guys they're not supposed to. I think the secret is, it's easy to be the underdog sometimes, but how do we get these guys that quote unquote have everything to lose, have a lot, quote unquote, have a lot on the line? How do we get them to have that unseeded wrestler mentality of going out there and competing free?
Yeah, I think one thing's for sure, like you talked about the guys that were track wrestling or go on the forums or do stuff like that, I think one thing, and I'll admit this too, like I read them, I read the forums, I read the messages, I see what people got to say. But I think one thing you have to take into mind is that opinions have never really mattered when it comes to sports. Because all that matters is a moment. One moment matters, and it's yours. And in our sport, we're lucky enough to, I think, one-on-one battle. You can make it your moment, and you can take it. And so, like when you talk about guys, having a lot on the line, and it's like it's all or nothing for them maybe in this point. I think it goes back to just like nothing that no one says has mattered. Nothing, everything that you've been through, everything that you've done has led to this moment, and you can make it yours. It is still in your hands. I think that's what gives me confidence, especially like when I go out there and I'm wrestling somebody and I'm putting everything on the line. It's still in my hands to go out there and perform and make this what I want it to be. I still have that right, that opportunity and that choice to do so. So that gives me confidence because I like being in the driver's seat. I like being able to say like, this is what I'm going to do. So not focusing on what everyone else has to say and realizing what they have to say really doesn't mean that much. And just doing what you do and taking advantage of making this one moment your moment.
I believe it. I was at NCAA's. Kyle Cannell before Kyle Cannell was Kyle Cannell. He was just some guy from Kent State that was huge. And, and I'm watching him become a celebrity in the midst of those 2 days that I'm there. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, can you imagine if mindsets were flipped in those matches with him and Colin Moore? Like, just imagine if they were flipped and someone wasn't protecting. Like, I felt like, Colin was almost like protecting his status, was wrestling. I want to say not to lose, but definitely conservative. And Colin was like, man, I'm just going to go for whatever I got to lose. Like, you're the number one guy in the country. I'm just some kid from Ohio. Yeah.
I think I think we saw an example of people on two different spectrums mentally, but also in two different situations as far as, what they were ranked, how they were performing and everything. I think we just saw a vast difference. And when they collided, I think you saw what happened. Like, you see what you saw what happened. I mean, Connell gets a great throw and pins the number one guy, and then later on comes back and beats him again.
Yeah.
Or I think what was it? It was a third and fourth place match.
Third and fourth, yeah. It wasn't just once. It was again.
Yeah, and then I don't know. I think that was amazing. When you talk about making a moment yours, I mean, that's a prime, like you said, prime example of that. And and he wanted it. You just saw it in him, that fire in him. He wanted that fight, and he was willing to go out there and do whatever it needed to be done to take advantage of the situation, take advantage of his moment. I mean, that's what I talk about. When you talk about making your moment yours, I mean, that was a great thing to see. Someone doing that and taking full advantage of an opportunity.
I think that changed his life. I think that tournament changed the trajectory of the rest of his life. And Kyle, if I'm remembering, if he was not my first, he was my second podcast guest. And honestly, what inspired me, we've talked about me personally doing a podcast and interviewing guys. I'm always when I travel, I'm always interviewing guys and picking their brains, and watching him, Mock, Ronnie Perry, and Tariq do what they did was what sparked me initially to be like, you know what? The wrestling world needs to hear about it, and they need to hear more than just what Flow Wrestling's going to put on a little article.
No, for sure. I mean, these guys, I've gotten to talk and hang out and meet with all of them.
Yep.
I was talking with Connell even before Nationals, but I was talking with that Nationals, and I could just really sense the sense of joy, because I remember talking before the Colin Moore match. And he told me exactly what you're saying. Like, I'm just going to go out here and give it my all, man, and do what I do. I'm like, all right, man. And also, I've got to hang out all summer with Machiavelli, and Tyreek Wilson. I was out actually in North Carolina earlier in the year before Worlds. And so, I mean, like, these guys are all great people. They have a great head on their shoulders, and the way they carry themselves, I think really transfers over to the wrestling mat, and like I said, when I talk about willing to give yourself to something, especially other people, and how you treat people, how you hold yourself, all these guys that you saw at Nationals gave everything they were on the mat.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the performances they had were just outright amazing. There's nothing short of amazing. So, I mean, it's just a transference. How you live your life off of it is how it's going to perform on the mat for you. So,
for sure. So shout out to those guys. They were among the first couple episodes, and whether I said it or not, their performances were inspiration to lead to what ended up being a really cool thing last year. And like I said, J'den, you'll be kicking it off this year, so I'm excited for everybody to continue to benefit from hearing from all the great lessons from these guys. I got one or two more quotes, and then we're gonna start moving into directly at the mindset. And let's see. I don't like to think when I wrestle. I just like to be blank. Tell me about that.
Well, that's more of like, I don't want to react. I want to be fluent. I don't want to react to you wrestling. I want to be steps and steps ahead of you. Like, it's not if I'm thinking, then I'm missing points. It's kind of like what I tell people. I'll give an example. For instance, if I see the shot before I felt it, I've missed my opportunity. If I feel it before I see it, then I'm already there. I've beaten you. So that's kind of what that's kind of going towards. I want to be blank. I don't want to think. Once a thought pops in your head to do something, normally by that time it's already gone by. So I just want to be blank, and I'm just going into things, and I'm being fluent. I'm being almost like what Bruce Lee says. I'm like water. I can fit in anything, in any situation, and I'm going to do it. I'm going to do what it is that I'm capable of. But yeah, I think that's kind of like, that's the example I kind of use. Just like, if I see the shot before I take it, I'm sorry. If I see the shot before I feel it, I've missed it. If I feel it before I see it, I'm right on time.
I dig it. I dig that. So that's what I've got for quotes. I think J'den, you definitely got some good ones, and you I hope you guys, I'll have made little clips of those quotes in particular, but I thought those were all really good. People that have followed your career, they know that you're so much more than a wrestler. We've talked about that. I was at Beat the Streets in New York City a couple of years ago when you competed, and I got to watch you sing to everybody at the gala. Tell us more about your love for music, and do you have aspirations to take that somewhere?
I don't know. There's something about music that's just it's awesome. It's amazing. I personally like it when it's a good one. I like songs kind of getting stuck in my head. I like the feeling that music kind of just gives you. Every song either has like a story, or how it means something different to each person. And I love to write. I love to write music as well. I mean, I love putting things together and putting pieces together that can really connect with another person in some way. And I like how it connects with each person differently, and they can express that to me, because that just brings up more ideas. As far as, do I see it going somewhere? I mean, I would love to perform places. I would love to take my music and share it with people. I would love for that to be a thing. I would say right now I'm in a position where I'm not able to take steps towards that. But it is something that I would really appreciate, and just sharing my music and actually having conversations about it, and having people around that could maybe even help me grow in it. So yeah, I mean, I hope one day that maybe it can become something. But right now, it's more of just a hobby right now than anything.
Yeah, and it's a great hobby. You're very talented at it. Where's a place that we could find more of your music?
Right now, I don't really have a place, but if you want to, there's some videos I know of YouTube. I should probably work on putting more songs out then, and so that people can experience that.
I think, like I said, it's a good hobby, and thankfully you're good at it. Some people like making music too, but they're not quite as good at it as you are. So at least you give us something to enjoy.
Sure.
So what I'll do here, I have one more comment that I want to make, a testament to you, and then we'll go, like I said, what's called the Mindset Quickfire. And these are direct mindset related questions, to kind of see how J'den Cox thinks in these certain scenarios. But one thing I will say is that, I was at Monterey Clinic and I watched you show technique, and I remember going home and, there was Zeke Jones, Cliff Fretwell, Mike Krause, all these guys who we all in the wrestling community respect, that are great coaches and great clinicians. They get flown all over the country. They're very talented. And I found myself saying, this guy just graduated college and honestly presented his technique and his part of his clinic in a better and almost easier and enjoyable way than some of the most seasoned coaches that get flown around the country. So as a testament to you, I'm sitting there, man, I've spoken at so many clinics and conventions. I've seen hundreds of people give clinics, and I walked away from that clinic. I learned a lot from everybody, but I was like, damn, man, J'den killed it. I was just so impressed with how I remember you talked about, you got to be a good liar when you talked about fakes, right?
Right.
And
I remember that.
Yeah, you talked about being a good liar. And I remember telling kids, like, I went back to my kids' wrestling class. I was like, Mom and Dad always told you to never lie. But the one time that it's okay to lie is when we're trying to do our fakes for our shots. And all the kids, their eyes lit up like, I get it. They're like,
God.
I'm going to be a good liar. Because they're like, I get to do something bad, but it's not really bad. And Mom and Dad aren't going to get mad at me.
Oh, that's awesome.
So I just found that really funny. Like I said, you showed some really good stuff. I saw the video on my phone. I was super impressed. I guess you're done competing. Do you plan on coaching?
That's something I'm still trying to figure out myself if I want to or not. I'll put it like this: if I can put my full heart into it and my full all my passion behind it, I definitely can see myself doing it. I know one of my big things I want to do is teach. So I think that if wrestling is something I can tack on to that and put all of what I am behind that as well, then yeah, I could see myself doing it.
For sure. Well, I hope you do, and I hope you and Yanni end up coaching on the same team because that would be killer. I told Yanni's got literally one of the best wrestling minds that I've ever heard, and the kid's like 19 years old. I think he's going to make an amazing coach one day, and I think you will too. So I hope you both, whether you find your way to two separate teams or to each other, I think you guys are going to do great things for the sport of wrestling. So I hope you find your way back to sitting in the coach's chair.
Oh yeah, for sure. I love Yanni, by the way. Great dude.
Oh, like one of the best dudes I ever met. Like, just he is such a unique person and just such a good dude. But like I said, so smart, like leaps and bounds and years ahead of like how old he actually is.
For sure.
Shout out to Yanni. So, all right, mindset quickfire. We got about 8 simple questions. Quick answer to it. We don't have to get too in depth, but kind of, your first thoughts in your head when I talk about this. So, first question. What's the importance of mindset in wrestling, and why is it important for a wrestler to train it?
It's important for a wrestler to train it because, like, your mind's like another muscle, and your body's going to follow that. This is the one muscle in your body that all of your body's going to follow. So you need to train it to be in a tip-top shape, to having the thoughts you want it to have, because your body's going to follow whatever it is that comes to it.
The way that you think influences the way that you feel. The way that you feel influences the way that you perform, just like we talked about.
For sure.
For sure. Who's the most impactful person in developing your mindset?
Mike Ironman.
I figured that would be. Why?
He just helped me in so many ways, and he knew how to help me both on and off the mat mentally, not just how I carry myself, but mentally. And he allowed me not only did he show me how important it was for my mindset to be strong, and he didn't keep my mind in a box. He allowed my mind. He taught me how to open my mind up to everything, so I could dive into whatever it is that I was getting into as a wrestler and as a person.
Solid. Now, Mike runs Ironman Elite, correct?
Yes, sir.
So that is in which part of Missouri?
That is in Millersburg, Missouri.
Millersburg, Missouri. So if you're from Missouri or you're visiting, that's definitely a place to be. There's lots of great wrestling clubs in Missouri. That's definitely one of them. Make sure you check out. Make sure you check them out. Check out Ironman Elite when you're in that area. Okay, what do you focus on when you wrestle?
That's a hard one. I think I just focus on. I think it's just more so for me. It's just being free, cutting loose. I try not to focus on anything. I don't want to.
Well, it's like you said. You talk about being blank.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so like we talk about, when you wrestle, the things that you can control, your effort, your attitude, and your aggressiveness. Like, am I giving 110%? Am I out here to dominate? And am I? We say aggressiveness. Kyle says attack rate. Am I constantly attacking, looking to score points? When you wrestle and relating it to that, how would you kind of like bridge that gap? Like, what are you trying to accomplish?
Well, I think that for me, I think what I'm trying to accomplish, I think I try to accomplish all those things. I just think that the way I think about being blank allows me to, I guess, one, not have any fear to do those things. And plus, like, for instance, like when you talk about it's kind of like when I always notice some people have a game plan and they need that, right? They need that game plan set in stone. But my question is, what happens when that game plan doesn't work, right? How does your mind react? How do you react to that? Do you have a game plan after that? For me, I don't really go out there with that much of a game plan. I don't go out there with that much of a thought to get these takedowns, but I'm always ready. And it's not so much as me, I necessarily react to a situation. I think that really, for me, I'm prepared for every situation to go into it and go 110% into what I have to do, whether that be coming back from behind, whether that being I need to take more shots, whether that being, I need to defend my legs more. I'm ready to then dive into anything and everything.
Gotcha, for sure. Next one I've got. What do you feel like is the most important aspect of mindset? I'm going to name you a couple, and you tell me which one you feel like is the most important to have success. Self-knowledge, confidence, being able to relax under pressure, aggressiveness, or toughness.
I would have to say self-knowledge. I think self-knowledge is because I think one thing that you have to be able to do is be honest with yourself, especially I think in any situation, especially when it comes to those high pressure situations. And I think knowing how to then overcome, how you feel and knowing how to change your mindset, and then how to go out there and perform. I think that's a big thing, because if you can know that, then you can prepare yourself for every match, every situation, and anything really. But if you don't, then whether you're tough, whether you're this, whether you're that, but once you get out of that and you don't know how to then make those adjustments within yourself, you're going to be lost either way.
I agree. So it's funny. So we have 60 worksheets in our program. It's a systematic approach that builds upon itself with all these different topics. I named a few of them. And self-knowledge is the largest. There's 10 worksheets in self-knowledge. The largest one, second, is confidence at 8 worksheets. And, aggressiveness is 5. Relaxing under pressure, I think, is maybe 5. Mental toughness is 4 or 5. But self-knowledge is 10. And nice. So it goes right along with what you and, a lot of great wrestlers and coaches would say. So pre-match, outside of the prayer that you do you warm up? Do you have a specific way that you warm up every single time before you wrestle? Like, do you have a pre-match routine? And if you do, why is that important for you?
I don't know. I don't really have like necessarily a pre-match routine that I follow to the book, but it's like pretty much similar. I know that I jog 3 laps hard. I do 20 skips forward, 20 skips backwards. And then I do 10 shuffles on right and left side. And it's a long one. So, and I do 2 cartwheels each way, 3 forward, 3 back, 3 forward rolls, 3 backward rolls. I mean, I do 10 karaokes, 5 with a high knee on each side. So, I mean, I know I have one that I go through. There's not an order I follow it, but I just do that mainly because that's what I do every day in practice. And I make it as a like routine for me. Just lets me know my body feels good and I'm ready.
Absolutely. Body feels good and you're ready. Greg Jones, so 3-time national champ from West Virginia. He's a guy that I do a lot of work with on the side of the martial arts mindset program, our martial arts specific training program that we have with all our UFC fighters. And him and I wrote an article for Flow Combat and talking about whether it be MMA, whether it be wrestling. This is something I touched on earlier about how, people expect when you get to the NCAA championships or the world championships, or you're at that level, that you no longer get nervous. True. We all feel nerves. The difference is that these guys at the high levels tend to have a better method and system to deal with it. So do you feel like you still get nervous at all before you wrestle, or in general, how do you deal with the feelings that you get before you wrestle?
I have 2 answers. When I'm not nervous, I'm usually singing and whatnot and hanging out and talking to people. When I am nervous, I acknowledge it. I don't try to hide it. I talked to someone about it. I'm saying this is how I'm feeling, mainly because talking about it kind of it makes it easier to deal with.
It humanizes it. It makes it real, and you can deal with it.
Right. And it's not like I'm trying to hide this thing and put it down. I acknowledge that it's there and it's real. And I did a video earlier on this, is that nerves really mean nothing more than this really matters to you, and that it means the most to you. It's important. And so then why not go out there and give everything you have towards something that you really care about?
Absolutely. Biggest regret?
My biggest regret? My biggest regret. I don't really know if I have one, to be honest. I don't think I do. I'm not really in life, nor really in wrestling. I don't really have a regret because I can't go back in time to change anything. So maybe it was like spending money. Like, I think actually I have a regret. It's kind of funny. Spending money that I know that if I didn't spend it, I'd still have it now. Give me an example. Well, that's basically anything. Like, if I bought my I bought my Xbox. I kind of have that feeling too. Like, oh, well, if I would have bought my Xbox One, I'd still have that money. Or I go and get like drinks from like a gas station or something. Like, if I wouldn't have spent that, I'd been fine.
That's funny.
I think that's, for me, that's like probably one of the regrets, or something I think about. Like, you know what? That's ridiculous. I wish I would have had that money back. It would have been nice.
So you said earlier you addressed the importance of faith in your wrestling. Short version of that answer of what is the connection of what is your connection of faith to your wrestling and why it's important? Well,
faith, like I said, faith eliminates fear. It allows you to walk the unlit path that you've never been before. That's basically the short version of that. It eliminates that fear of walking that path that you've never been down.
Faith eliminates fear. I look forward to using that again. Importance of gratitude. So, we talked about how, Kale says the mental edge of Penn State is gratitude. There's a whole article about it for you or anybody else that wants to read about it. When I spent a week in Utah with Kale's family, gratitude was something that I heard from constantly, and the culture was there. I did a camp. Let me think about this, J'den. How many camps have you done? Like you think over 100?
No, I wouldn't think so. Maybe like 60s or
50, 60s, right?
Yeah.
How many times did you have a big group and regardless of the number, a good chunk of them, kids, come up to you afterwards and without anybody asking them to do so, shook your hand, looked you square in the eye and said sincerely, thank you so much for coming. I learned so much today.
I think probably every one of them.
So I haven't seen that. I guess in the number of clinics that I've been to, I haven't seen as many, with the exception of all right, everybody shake blah, blah, blah's hand now that he's done. Tell him thank you for coming today. When I was in Utah, these kids came up and in large numbers lining up to shake all the coaches' hands, looking us square in the face and from their heart being thank you, so much for coming. And I just related that a lot to what the stuff that Steve Sanderson had to say. And, like I said, maybe you've had some different experiences than me, but in the majority of the places that I've been, there's a handful of kids that'll come up. Dude, I had 125 kids consecutively shake my hands one of these days. And just look at, how some people just kind of hey, thanks. They just line up in a line. These kids all shook my hands like they meant it.
No, for sure. I think mine are a little different because I don't know about you guys, I'm gonna say, but I think I really try to get to know the person rather than the wrestler in my camps. I learn every kid's name and I try to remember it. And and I cross the bridge with them to then, because I thank them because I'm honored to be there. I'm honored that their coaches, whether it be their coaches or whether a kid reached out to me and then I reached out to his coach, that I'm there. So and once I, either I close that gap, with them, then I think that I get a different reaction from them, because it makes the camp more than just a wrestling camp. We're it's a lesson about how to be, like we talk about, being good people, and holding yourself, whether it be to a higher standard, treating other people's right. We're crossing this line of which we can, we're blending the lines actually of off the mat and on the mat. And so then I get more of a personal relationship with each person, each wrestler that I encounter.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I think that definitely is a different culture than most of the clinics that I think, we come across. People get paid, they come in, they show some moves, maybe they keep it fun. But, like I said, when I saw you at the California Coaches Convention, and you ran it differently than everybody else. We enjoyed everybody else's clinics, but they weren't J'den, and that was just amazing to see from, a young guy. I mean, I'm not old, I'm 32, but how old are you?
23.
Yeah, like you're 23, so you must have been maybe 22 at the time, and you're just getting out of college. And I'm like, man, if that was a concert, and like he just crushed it. If there's anybody on after him, like no one's paying attention.
Oh no, man! Thank you very much. That means a lot.
Yeah, man, you did a great job. So, lastly, and we always end with this, what is your mental edge when you compete?
I think that, like I talked about, where the two biggest things with me are faith and fun, and that's the freedom of the pressure, freedom of everything, looking at me, of maybe that other people put importance in, freedom from everything, and just going out there and wrestle, and freedom of fear. I think that gives me an edge on everyone.
Freedom, faith, and fun. So I think that sounds like another article.
For sure. I like the sound of that. Freedom, faith, and fun.
Freedom, faith, and fun, or faith, fun, and freedom.
The other one was better.
Yeah, I think that sounds a little bit better. So, J'den, again, I really appreciate your time today. I know you've had a busy schedule. Obviously none of you guys knew this. Between my schedule and J'den's schedule, we had to kind of bounce around a little bit to get our podcast done today. He's taken guys to the Northern Colorado Open, and hold on. What's funny is my phone decided to start playing music in the middle of the podcast. I'm not sure how that happened.
Oh, I couldn't hear it, but no.
Yeah, so all of a sudden I'm listening to, we're talking and Drake starts playing. And I'm like, wait a second. That's not supposed to happen. So to finish what I was saying, J'den's in Colorado taking these EAP guys to, the Northern Colorado Open tomorrow. And, he's got a lot of cool things going on. Obviously, a very bright future, coming off a very successful tournament. Again, J'den, as we're wrapping up, obviously, I'm very thankful. What do we have to look for you next? What's the next thing where we're going to see J'den Cox? Not necessarily competing, but in general, like what's next up in your schedule in your life?
Well, next up, as most people know, AWL is coming up November 30th. So I'll be there. I'm doing some commentary, and I look forward to seeing some great matches and an awesome event. So everybody needs to check that out. Just check in.
Check that out. It's going to be great for wrestling. I think we've tried multiple times to do these wrestling leagues. I think we finally figured it out. It's got a lot of potential. So everybody make sure to check that out. And J'den, how do we find you? How does everyone listening to this podcast that doesn't already follow you on social media for some super strange reason, if they don't already, how do they find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Matrix_8692 or Instagram at JMIZ_CUSA, or Facebook. JC Cox is my name on Facebook.
Awesome. So Matrix, explain that one real quick.
Well, actually, it's not necessarily Matrix. If you see the first three letters are capitalized and it says Matt Trix.
I guess I didn't realize that when I'm thinking about when I've seen you on Twitter before. So that's funny. So spelt Matrix, but Matt Trix. Got it. Well, guys, make sure that you give J'den a follow. Obviously, he's always, he's posting great content. You can follow his career and the stuff that he's involved with. This podcast will be available I can't give the exact date, but it'll be released. It'll be released on a Monday, and it will start back our Mindset Monday podcast series of interviews with great wrestlers, great coaches, and great competitors. Excited to have J'den kick it off. And again, J'den, thank you for your time today. Best of luck to all your guys tomorrow competing at the Northern Colorado Open. And we look forward to seeing you get back on the mat.
No, definitely.